Welcome to my channel. Thank you for coming back. So today we're going to be doing a very simple, quick project that you can do with scraps even. And we are going to be making a tissue or a Kleenex pouch that you can clip onto a bag. So this is the one I featured in my short, if you saw that earlier this week. And then I have several of these made, but here's just another example just using a different combination of fabrics. So this one is going to be a very simple project that we're going to do. Also, I had another short that I posted this week because I finished a quilt and I had so many scraps left that I went ahead and pieced just a scrap panel by cutting up some 2.5 inch scraps, some of them not even the same sizes, and I've pieced a panel. So let me know in the comments today what you would like to see us make with this. Keep in mind, it's the perfect size for, you know, something like a bag or a little case. So comment on some things that you would like to see us do with this. This also is something that you could do with some of your 9 patches that you've been practicing. So let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear. Also, I'd like for you to like and subscribe to my channel if you're enjoying the videos. We're trying to keep these coming out at least once a week for you, and we would appreciate the love. So I want to go over supplies for today. So I have printed patterns just using my Cricut for basically rectangles. So you're going to need one rectangle that is 5.5 by 8.5 inches, and this is going to be the lining, and you're just going to cut one of those out. And then you're also going to need to cut out your outside fabric that you want in a 5.5 by 7 inch rectangle. And again, you will just cut one. Now, if you want yours to be sturdier, you can add another piece to this one if you want to cut it out, and just cut out the same size and just do some fusible interfacing if you want, but you don't have to. So really you just need these 2 pieces. And then in addition to that, you want to cut out a 2-inch square. And so literally it can be just 2 inches both ways, or about 2 inches. Honestly, I just did it as close to 2 inches as possible. And this is going to be the part that you put the actual key holder or clip on that you're going to use, because you can change that up to different things. But basically that's all you're going to need to actually do this project, other than your normal sewing supplies like your sewing machine and all of the accessories that you need to, you know, cut and clip your threads. So the first thing you want to do is take your 2-inch square, and we want to fold it in half and go ahead and press it. And then I want to open this back up, and where we just made that crease, fold in each side and also press it down. And what this is going to do is just give us that little piece that we need to put our clip on, and that's going to be the first thing that you'd like to do when you start this project. And so once I have these 2 to the inside, we're going to fold it now back on that center fold that we made. Just make sure it's lined up, and we're going to press it down, and that is going to give us the piece that we need to secure the hook. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go to the sewing machine, and we're going to sew a stitch straight down the left side and straight down the right side to hold these 2 sides completely down together. Once we have sewn that, then we're going to take our clip and we're going to loop this through the clip, and that is going to be the piece that we're going to sew into the panel once we get that made. So now we're going to just take that piece, as I mentioned, and we're going to just get close to the edge, lower your presser foot, and go ahead and sew a couple of stitches. Do your back stitch on your machine. And then we just want to sew down both sides, just to hold everything in place. And clip your threads, okay? And then just turn it and do the same thing on the other side. Just on the edge. Make sure you backstitch just to give it a little bit more strength on those ends. Okay, and then again, just clip your threads, and so this part is done as far as how to make that attachment. And so the next thing that I like to do with this is I prefer to go ahead and put the clip in mine and go ahead and sew as close to the edge of the metal here that I can, just to secure that tightly around the metal so that it is secure. And again, I like to put the metal pointing outward of my machine so that I can better get a grip with the foot. So I'm just going to lay this down. And so straight across. Again, just make sure these ends are even. And I'm just going to lower my needle and just secure one stitch a couple of times back and forth, just to hold that in place. And just get as close as you can with your machine based on the foot and that metal ring that you have. So I just do it a couple of times, and what that's going to do basically is that's just going to help us hold this in place. And then once you have this part done, just set this aside, because the next part is going to be piecing the actual tissue holder together for the next part. So for the next part, we're going to assemble our lining to our outside fabric. Remember, your outside fabric is your shorter fabric. And what I want to do is line up the edge of both pieces and put them right sides together, because this is going to help us when we flip it. And we're going to just sew a stitch about 1/4 inch of away on this side. And then we're going to do the same thing over here. And I know it seems strange because this is a shorter piece, but we're going to just push that in away from everything, and we're going to do it again over here and line it up. And we're also going to go ahead and sew another straight stitch on this side. So now we are going to go ahead and sew that outer side. So I'm going to just put it at about 1/4 inch, and like my machine has the edge of my foot as 1/4 inch away, and I'm just going to start back stitch and continue sewing all the way, making sure it's aligned. You can also pin it if you prefer. And we're just going to go ahead and sew that seam all the way down this side. When you get close to the end, make sure you do back stitch, because we do want to secure this. We're going to do the same thing, but this time just remember you're going to have a little bit of a fold in the middle that's kind of just hanging, kind of random. But we're going to line up that edge, and we're just going to do the same thing that we just did and continue so that both sides are sewn down in a straight line as we did the first one. Again, don't forget to back stitch at the beginning, and you want to do the same thing when you get to the end. You also want to back stitch. And this is the next step in making your little tissue pouch. And again, you can cut off all of your extra threads that we're hanging from starting those sides at one time, just to keep the process going. And then what you're going to see is that both sides are sewn together. And now we want to turn this the correct way so that we can see our inside and outside pattern. And now I'm going to show you how to properly position this to sew the next step. So once you flip your fabric out, you're going to notice that you're going to have your lining kind of showing. So just try to finger press it to get both sides about the same amount on the outsides. And once you have it finger pressed about as much as you think it needs to be, where it's kind of even, you're going to take the iron and you're just going to press that down in place. Now once you press this down in place, you are going to flip it over and you are going to line it up so that these two pieces are going to be centered. But because this is our inside, we want this to be folded in the opposite direction so that our lining is actually inside. So you will want to fold it and line up the pieces that are going to be overlapped on the outside for your opening. And so I like to just join mine kind of where I can see they're overlapped. And then I want to go ahead and press this down also, because that helps me keep that fold in place where I need it. And then I'm just going to kind of eyeball where the clip needs to go. So when I put the clip in, the clip needs to go in a centered area of where these two folds were made, because this is going to be your overlap. So I like to come back and just kind of figure out where that needs to go. And we've already put a seam here with a stitch to kind of hold that. So using these lines, just kind of figure out the center here. And now we're going to sew this into place. And that is going to give us our clip. Or if you want to pin it, you can go ahead and sew at one time when we sew the outsides together. And that is a step that I typically do because it's just easier for me to go ahead and sew one time. And so when it's closed, you can make sure that you have a center here, and that way you have your entire tissue pouch closed up, and you'll have your clip in place as well. If you're comfortable with a pin there, you can, but that's completely up to you whether or not you insert a pin. So now that we have this ready, I'm going to go ahead and just center this like we mentioned, and go ahead and sew this down in the center of the center panel. And we're going to use the ironed lines that we created as kind of a placement. Now, when you put this in, you want your clip to go out this way. So when you're sewing, you need your clip to actually go down into the particular project so that when we flip it, it's going to cause this to lay the correct way on the outside. So you do want to sew it pointing inside of your actual project. So we're going to go ahead and sew that in place. And again, I am just going to line it up so that it's 1/4 inch. And I'm just going to go across the stitch, and then I'm going to backspace over it one more time just to make sure I add a little extra stability, because of the fact that this is going to be something that you are hanging on a project, hanging from a project. So we are going to clip those off, and then we're going to go back in once we have that secured to the inside, and make sure you clip all of your threads off that are strays if you need to. We are now going to go back and take the folds that we created, and we're going to put those back in place. And now we're going to sew across here and we're going to flip it, and we're also going to sew across here with a 1/4 inch seam. Again, make sure you keep the clip out of the path of your needle, so it may just need to have an extra hand there. Make sure you also back stitch at the beginning and the end. And when you start getting to the area where your clip is close to your foot, you may have to lower your needle and position your fabric so that it stays in position under the foot before you continue, and just kind of go slow there to give it time if you need to, and then you can speed up once you get past that point, and then back stitch when you get to the end. And then we're just going to clip off those threads, and we're going to do the same thing on the other end. We're just going to flip it around, and now we're going to sew this down the same way. Don't forget to back stitch at the beginning and at the end. We're just doing a 1/4 inch seam. Now, before I flip this out the correct way, one of the things I want to do is secure my edges, because you do have raw edges and you don't want anything on the inside to ever come unraveled. So I go back to my machine and I line my needle up in the center of my fabric, and I lower the presser foot, and I choose a zigzag stitch, or if your machine, which mine does, happens to have a surging stitch, then I am going to go ahead and put mine on the surging stitch or pick a zigzag stitch, and I'm just going to go back to the right side of that seam and just zigzag the whole area, so that I am putting that into position to stop any frayed edges from happening. And I'm just going to center my needle between that seam line and the edge of the fabric, and I'm just going to do a zigzag stitch all the way down that side again. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, so that I don't have anything later that's going to come unraveled. And so I'm just going to flip it around. Again, you want to center your needle directly between your stitch you just created and the outside of your fabric, and choose a zigzag stitch and just get those edges kind of in place. All right, now I'm coming up on my clip, so as you can see, when you get to that point, you may have to pull it down and make sure you keep that out of the way. And just go slow and let your machine kind of work through that. Slow down if you have to when you get to that area that's a little more bulky. And what this is going to do too is help secure your clip in place a little better with an extra stitch too. And so once you've done both of your zigzag stitches, or you've done a surge stitch, depending on what kind of machine you have, we do want to just clip off any little extra threads that are visible to make this not be as ragged looking. And make sure we position and take care of any stray threads that you might see. Kind of clip those clean. And once you have those cleared off, now you're just going to take your tissue holder and you are going to poke out your corners and flip it right side out, making sure that you just press your corners out really good. And if you have something sharp that's not going to have a sharp point, but just something to help, and you want those points to be really good. You can just use that also, like a little chopstick maybe that doesn't have a real sharp point, just to push your points out completely. Now, once you do that, I would give it one more good press, but you have a completed tissue pouch. So congratulations, you have finished your first little tissue pouch. Very simple project, very easy. So the next thing to do is just to add yourself a pack of tissues. Now, as you know, tissues come with a way to open them in the back. So you have two options. You can insert yours and use the provided opening as just the way to use that. And if you choose to put yours in that way, you can clip off the excess piece. Or if you want to leave it on there and just know that when you get a Kleenex out, that you're just going to have that pushback with your fabric, you can do it that way. Or if you don't want to open that part at all to put your Kleenex in, what I have done in the past is just take a pair of scissors and pull this up and just cut myself a new slit that doesn't have to pull as wide, and then I just pull the Kleenex through the little slit here. So you have a couple of options, but either way, you have the perfect little accessory for your bag. This is great for a backpack. It's great for a purse. If you're going on a trip somewhere and you know you might need some Kleenex, this is just a great little thing to have clipped on your bag. I hope that you've enjoyed making this project with us today. Again, like and subscribe to our channel. I will have some of these also available for sale on the link in the description for my shop on District. So if you don't want to really make a bunch of these, but you want to buy some for back to school, feel free to check out my shop. I have several different patterns available. Thank you again. I hope to see you next time.